So hello there, I'm Anne-Maree from Wadlidge Consulting, and on my left here is Alexandre Alfonsi of Axonia Capital, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what his firm does and how they go about doing it, particularly with an emphasis on the emerging markets.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Alexandre Alfonsi. I'm one of the partners and founding members of Axonia Partners. We are a Paris-based boutique involved in advisory work. We do corporate finance work, i.e. M&A and fundraising for small mid-market companies internationally. And we also get involved in fundraising advisory work. We work with GPs worldwide and with LPs in their selling of private equity interest. When we do that, we always look for differentiated strategies. We look for managers who have really an angle that they can demonstrate, whether they are in developed markets or in emerging markets. That's really much how we go about this. Yeah.
Okay, and can you tell us in particular about emerging markets? How active have you been? What have you been doing?
Sure.
Can you give us some small examples perhaps?
Yes, we've given our bias towards entrepreneurs and growth stories, we've been very much focused on emerging markets since inception. In fact, in the last 5 years, we worked on 4 different projects coming out of Africa, helping GPs based in Africa raise capital, primarily from European investors. And we've been very much involved on that side of the business, so not only on the private equity advisory side, but also on the M&A side, where we've started to generate a lot of M&A transactions cross-border, whether they are European companies seeking to generate growth by acquiring SMEs in emerging markets, but also increasingly now there's a reverse trend that we're seeing of SMEs from developing markets seeking to acquire distribution channels in developed markets, or as a way as well to secure their output for services or products.
So really a reverse trend.
Absolutely.
Actually, people in the emerging markets, and I think you're very active in Africa, actually
Yes.
looking outside the continent.
Absolutely.
To expand their footprint.
Yes. And the connection as well between our 2 activities is there are a lot of connections that we generate from our private equity advisory activities, whether there are links or connections with very specialized private equity asset managers, but also family offices who are increasingly seeking to invest directly into companies. And those connections are very much useful when it comes to working on the differentiated M&A buy-side or sell-side mandate. Yeah.
And when you are looking at helping a fund manager to raise capital from some of the family offices with which you have relationships, what are those family offices actually looking for?
Well, pretty much the same thing that I guess we are looking for as well. We're looking for teams before and above. They're really, we want them to be not only strong individually, but collectively we want to make sure they will stick together for the time of the fund and that they will have to manage. Obviously that goes with the track record, and we understand how the relationship between their style, the investments they made, and the ones they're thinking of pursuing going forward. But also we're looking for targeted approaches as well. We're not really looking for teams that can demonstrate the difference by adding value in their portfolio companies, and value that we can articulate to those family offices, and that they respond well. Having themselves been in the business of creating companies, they can relate very well to those stories.
And how are you finding the current fundraising climate as such? I mean, how long is it taking you to raise a fund start to finish? And I'm aware it will depend very much on the fund manager.
Absolutely. Well, it's a tough fundraising environment at the moment, clearly. I guess we're always seeing managers closing faster than others. The main factor there being the repeat investors coming in. And obviously you need that first core of investors to get started and to generate interest for the new relationship that you want to bring to the table. And where we can advise as well, because this is probably where we add the most value. And from that point on, the time actually is very variable depending on the managers. but it's safe to bet on 6 to 18 months for the longer ones. Yeah.
And that's a realistic time frame for people to think about as they're coming up to fundraising.
Right.
Great stuff. And just one final thing, I'm looking at the relationship between the M&A activity that you do on one hand and the fundraising activity on the other one. And there are obvious correlations in what you do there and how you spend your time, and how the sources of that deal flow one way and the other come through. Can you talk about how complementary these two activities are, and particularly again with an emphasis on the work that you're doing in emerging markets?
Oh, thank you for asking. They're actually very complementary. We had I can think of two interesting cases in mind. One was a family office that we developed relationships with in the context of our private equity fundraising activities, that had us work on an M&A project involving an African-based company with international distribution worldwide. And so we were instrumental in helping that family office structure their investment into that company. And I think the fact that we are so sensitive to Africa and what it means as well for this corporation was very instrumental in us executing that deal. More recently, we've been involved in helping finding equity financing for a very visible asset in Africa, where we've been talking to select family offices about this project, which is a nice entry point for them when they're thinking about entering the continent in a relatively easy way to understand. In an asset that's well documented, where there's a lot of information available, and that's a good toehold investment into that market. Yeah.
So it really is a turnkey solution for some of the investors that you are speaking to on effectively a daily basis, both in terms of fund selection and in terms of the sort of M&A, the direct investment that they like to pursue, but perhaps need some advisory work alongside that.
Absolutely, and I think indeed for most of those investors sitting in Europe, when they think outside of Europe, they definitely need to be guided and make sure that someone is filtering out the opportunities that they see. And hopefully by spending time on the ground, meeting with people, getting our references, we can help them as well in doing that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Alexandre.
Thank you very much, Anne-Maree.
Tour of all things Axonia, and I hope you all enjoyed that.
Thank you, Anne-Maree. Thank you.